Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Alpine Odyssey, where we get to try to, finish skinning the new restaurant up here in the Aztec area, and we're going to make a new tile set to do so. I feel like there's a lot of building variation you can do with the Aztec area, very blocky, very stone heavy structures, and so that's kind of what we're doing here. We're essentially making a wall and then covering the front with a lot of these kind of keystone elements to make the blocks look heavier, thicker than you normally would with that castle texture behind it, though we do leave some relief there just for a bit of depth. We're going to add a lot of vertical elements as well, heavier pillars, columns like that, and then even add, 3 tiles in this sense, right? So for most buildings, you're going to need a window, you're going to need a door tile, and a normal wall tile. And this will give you the base foundation for a lot of buildings. You can add more depending on complexity, on how much you want to do, but for me, that's roughly how much I want. And because this is a restaurant, we're going to embellish it a little bit, make it not quite 100% Aztec, and I think that way it feels a little bit more like a theme park and less so much as you are having dinner inside of a ruin. So what we got here is the window tile, and very simply able to take off the window and some of the other minor details just so you can have the wall tile in there. And in this case, we're going to have 2 windows. We're going to have one with the non-see-through kind of effect, and then another with this wooden trim kind of going all the way and pushing through into this wall, and some more wooden aspects there just to make it look like we can actually see into the restaurant a little bit here and there. Again, this restaurant's going to have a full interior, and we're going to be tackling that during this weekend's live stream. So if you want to see that, throw out suggestions and really make this whole place shine, you can come out every Sunday around 10, 11 a.m., depending on what time zone you're in. 11 a.m. Eastern. But yeah, we're just gonna, just like most of our buildings in Alpine Odyssey, we look at the gray box, we measure it out, and we use these tiles to fill in a lot of the base shape, spacing out windows here and there, making sure the corners are pretty plain. Most corners in buildings kind of don't have windows there, so it makes sense not to have it. You count out the tiles on your little gray box structure, and we build a lot of our stuff away from everything else just so that we have room to kind of see it. And then when we move it in place, after it's basically roughly skinned, we add details and elements to basically kind of tie it all together. For me, that's kind of an easy way to build, especially since this is such a large park. There's a lot of moving pieces and little elements that kind of need to blended together to make the whole thing seem rather seamless, and it takes a decent amount of time. So you can see the restaurant first floor is an interesting shape. It's a kind of this L-shaped, but instead of connecting that fully to make it just a box, we have this diagonal going in front there, and that's going to be made with a separate piece of building just so that it's a little bit easier to get that diagonal angle in there. And that's pretty normal common building practice in Planet Coaster. If you want anything like with really complicated turns or rounded bits, you're going to be making one building out of multiple structures. And at this point, I hope people know to do that, though occasionally we do still get questions in the comments about, it's like, well, how'd you make that angled wall there and not ruin the grid? Well, this is simply how you do so. The upper area has a flat roof. The upper area is going to have kind of its own seating arrangement and have its own thing here, making the separate building for that angled wall kind of very much the same there. Get rid of the kind of gray boxing, align things, fiddle with it, make sure it's all lining up. Here's how you kind of get that angled roof line as well. So you kind of make a new roof tile onto this building that has that separated kind of ability to merge seamlessly into the square section. So that's what we did there. And then we are going to, of course, try and make this look a little bit more safe. So we need a little bit of a net, kind of railing with some wooden elements. And then we are using a little bit of a dull red brick trim along the roof line just to have a little bit of color in this thing. I feel like the large spires are colorful and jarring enough. So for the main bulk of the structure, we're kind of going in the opposite just to make the tower stand out more and not make the whole thing look completely overly busy. Aztec structures are very detailed, have a lot of relief carvings in them, and for me, in Planet Coaster, it's really easy to get bogged down into those smaller details, and you end up wasting kind of either a lot of time, and then you kind of pull back away, and the whole thing kind of falls apart because the macro kind of silhouette is lost. So that's kind of what I'm returning to here. It's kind of a little bit more reminiscent of the first area of the park, you know, the just heavy set stone and column work, and less of the vibrant colors that you see in the middle section of the Aztec area. We're going to have some wooden trim. We're going to have a wooden kind of covered walkway here and there, and this doorway, of course, leading down to the lower area of the restaurant so that people can actually sit and access this upper section. Now, we're not going to actually build that where that staircase is located. It's hard enough already to fit interiors in a lot of these buildings. So basically, in this scenario, we are definitely kind of running with the imagination that, yeah, you get up here. Somehow, you know, you might have to go through the ziggurat a little bit, but you don't know that. And there's a door here, so welcome to the balcony kind of thing. We are using, again, this wooden fence for framework for this leafy foliage kind of canopy on these things, and I think this looks really good. It's really a good way to add some color into your builds, making some things more naturalistic, and it's just, I don't know, a pop of color here and there is pretty nice, and it kind of contributes to that overgrown feel a little bit. I kind of wish we had a version of this seaweed that was thatch. I think it would be interesting because the thick thatch block that we do have is too pristine. It's not quite 100% what I would like to see. So more thatch variation I think would be pretty cool, just so we can do these jungle thatch buildings a little bit easier and make it look less European. That's why we kind of use this seaweed and ivy combination to make it look and feel like you're in a jungle. The backside currently is going to be unfinished until we work on the other side of that pathway, so we're not going to be touching that this episode. We are, of course, going to be adding some more upper trim. These balcony areas we'll probably touch upon during the live stream, these minor details, sitting areas, and other things. And at this point, I think we're going to be starting kind of the major detail for the restaurant. And it's an interesting one because I wanted this to be a campsite kind of vibe, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create some columns and some spire-like elements here to hang very large canopy tents off of. Now, I know some of you might not like this. I'm a little up in the air about it, but for me, as a storytelling element, it's fine. It also adds a little bit to more of a restaurant feel than, per se, just a recreation of an Aztec area. So what we're doing is spending way too much time on these large, they're almost like large sails, to be honest. Like if I was making a custom wooden ship for Planet Coaster, this is almost how I would go about doing it. So if that's something you guys are doing for your pirate parks, pay attention, because I think this is gonna hopefully help you out a little bit. So the best thing to do with these odd angled kind of pyramids is break it into smaller pyramids so that you are able to find the most common pathway to keep these things straight. All right, so that's what we did here initially. So it was very similar to 3D modeling. You know, you're going to have your planes. And now we are going to take a drape, and we are going to spend 2 hours that I cut out of the video kind of fiddling with this to get this one to line up and then to actually work together. So we are going to stitch each little triangle with these drapes. so that it can form a canopy. Pretty much a scaled up version as what you guys see below on the seating arrangements. And I know some of you said that it might make the place look like a marketplace rather than a tent or a canopy, but we'll see how far this goes, and you guys can give me your feedback as always in the comments down below, and we'll see if maybe other things would work. I didn't want to use art shapes. Essentially, art shapes are too reflective, and for that cloth feel, we really shouldn't use art shapes. It just doesn't make sense. Another good thing to do is what I'm doing now. A lot of these gaps are pretty long, and so it's pretty hard to line up the canvas to them. And so what I'm doing is I'm making kind of this understructure framework out of these icing windows to, one, mimic small little wooden things holding this tarp up, but also it gives you a larger plane to establish kind of the angle of these little triangles. And it's a little fiddly. The gizmo was kind of against me the whole time. It doesn't help that this thing is off the world grid axis, so working on that grid wouldn't have helped at all either. The cool thing about this little icing is the underneath shot that the peeps actually get if they are up here is really nice looking. I'm pretty happy with the way those turned out in the long run. And then here we simply just kind of skin and reskin areas to make it look stitched together like one big tent canopy. Now, a lot of these triangles are pretty hard to fill in with these long rectangular pieces. So you'll see me do kind of this fan effect and then use straight pieces to kind of fill in the gaps where I can. And it creates this interesting texture that I like a lot, to be honest. And the next tarp that I do off camera has even more texture and more of a pattern to it rather than this haphazard right side. We have some drapes hanging on the front too, just to make that look a little bit more solid. And then here we went ahead and skipped me skinning over to the next one. It took a long time to do those, so I'd rather not show it twice and then me have to explain, oh yes, we did this before. Yes, Uthris, explain this one more time for the next 5 minutes of the video. Yes, it sounds like a good idea. But no, we are going to try and now make the restaurant merge into the ziggurat a little bit. I got some comments of people saying it looks a little weird to build a structure onto the ziggurat, but keep in mind that from the peeps view, it doesn't quite look attached to the ziggurat because we're adding this broken area and a heavy layer of foliage kind of around here. It looks more like the ziggurat is overgrown, and then this is actually built beside of it. Now again, you know, that's kind of no excuse, but also we're in a theme park, so I can't make a proper like ziggurat plaza with this big open grass field with nothing near it touching it at all or interacting with it, because it's just not feasible in the space that we have. But the overgrown look and kind of gap fillers that we're adding now really help make the building look a little bit more believable. So this is pretty much it for today's speed build. We're going to go over into real time. That way you guys can see a little bit more of the granular details, and then feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Okay, and just like that, here we are, taking a look at the mostly finished restaurant exterior. We have our two towers to the middle, and then our large canvas kind of material coming out from additional support structures out behind and on top of the actual restaurant here. We are going to need a name for this place, so do leave names in the description or in comments down below. We are going to probably build a sign for it in this next live stream, and also try and finish kind of this front door, if not the interior. The interior might have to wait until we do the log flume stuff down here, but that's fine. We can still do plenty of work on the exterior. We have chairs, benches, flower pots to hang, other things to kind of tie it into the environment. I can't wait until the temple's done, because in the background having this tree line kind of divide the this structure from the structure behind it makes the temple one look farther away than it actually is, and also makes the two look like they're kind of more separated buildings. Overall, I think it's pretty successful of a structure. The textures here going up the tarps are really interesting. Kind of this fanning out left and right, zigzagging across each other and stitching together, almost like it's kind of a rundown used tent. We have some extra cloth hanging off on the ends just for effect, and the lattice from underneath just looks so nice, especially with these little coverings over here. You can get a good view from this balcony kind of overlooking back towards the kind of Jade Serpent Plaza, the plaza down below, some of the other Aztec areas sticking up, that large torch, and then of course the windmill in the background signaling the original European district is always kind of in view there. Now, some people might not like that you can see other themes from other areas in the park. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I enjoy the kind of clashing of cultures and items. So for me, it's really, really awesome to be able to see that tower, this tower, the windmill from so far away. You can't do that so much in the European section because of how tall these structures are, but also I think that's kind of good because the first part of the park is a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more secluded, and then as you work your way towards the lake, everything just opens up and you get this really kind of nice look here. So what we're going to be doing next stream, as I said, we are going to be looking to finishing up the exterior, if not some of the interior of this restaurant, naming it, creating some sort of sign, entryway, right? So tune in on Sunday for that around 11 o'clock Eastern time. The next episode of Alpine Odyssey, do let me know in the comments down below, because there's a couple options. We can either work on the Overpower ride and actually get this skinned, and the queue either partially started, if not divided up into 2 episodes. It's a pretty big ride compared to see this one down there, and that's an option. Or we can continue work on this area and get this whole chunked out and detailed up so that it's a little bit more finished looking. But there's still plenty of area here in the Aztec section to fill, and hopefully you guys have the patience, and I have the patience to keep kind of going here with the Alpine Odyssey. So thank you guys so much who enjoy Alpine Odyssey and want to see a lot more like this. Go ahead and hit that like button, leave a comment down below. You can sponsor the channel now if you guys want emotes for the live stream. We have a couple, and in fact we're one away from receiving our 3rd emote, so a little bit of fun for you guys in chat. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.